Hello, everyone. Chandanni here. I am so happy and a little bit reserved today due to everything that's been happening over the past week or so, with everything that's happening in America due to the police brutality and murder of George Floyd. It's my privilege and honor to introduce to you today my dear friend and fellow yogi for many, many years, world renowned yoga teacher and musician, Saul David Raye. Usually, I'm a lot more excited to introduce my guests, but I feel personally a bit somber and a bit in anxiety over what's been happening across America over the past week. And without wanting to focus on that necessarily and detract from your introduction, that I am so happy to be able to introduce you and welcome you to the Chandanni Conversation series, where we are discussing things regarding the crisis, the pandemic, and now with this occurrence of police brutality and racism in America. I would love for you, Sol, to introduce yourself to people that may not know you. So many people love and know you, and a little bit about our connection and just how you'd like to begin this conversation. Sol.
Thank you, Chandani. Thank you for having me. And my parents lived for 25 years in Hawaii. So in Hawaii we say aloha, which means to be in the same breath and spirit together, and a greeting of love to everyone. And rightfully so, with feeling, well, not that we should feel any specific way, but I feel you. I feel the same way. I feel that we're in such a deep and powerful time. We're all really feeling trauma from generations and so many things, and then it's just there have been so many things happening in the midst of this, the pandemic, and now another important wave of healing that needs to happen in America. But it's really, a theme that it goes all around the world: racism, institutionalized racism. What I'd love to do, if it's okay with you, is maybe you and I and everybody could just sit for like 1 minute in just a moment of silence and honor George Floyd and all of the other, unfortunately, so many people who have died, not only from police brutality, but in wars and in so many ways. So just an honoring of our hearts, a moment for peace, and honoring those that have passed. In the yoga tradition, we have a prayer for the welfare of all living beings in all worlds and all planes of consciousness. And I'm going to chant that, and if you know a prayer out there, if you have a prayer in your heart, please just say that or chant that today. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May all beings be happy, free from suffering. May I contribute to that consciousness in some way. May there be peace within me, peace within nature, peace within all of creation. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us in that. I want to qualify everything today as, it's like this is a conversation, and it's so important that we talk to each other and we listen to each other. And I'm not an expert. I've been doing yoga for many years, over 30 years, devoted my life to it, but I feel in many ways I'm a beginner. And so whatever I share today is just my own reflection, and and to have a conversation with you. I always love talking with you and sharing, and there is so much, I would say, importance in having conversations with each other, and really, listening with our big Ganesha ears. Ganesh is our deity in India, who is the incredible ears that symbolize deep listening, and all the senses go to the heart. So it's like when we really listen to each other, there's space to feel each other and to hear And it's said in India that all the senses go to the heart, and a lot of conversation today will most likely be about, finding ways to stay anchored in the heart and in our, human and spiritual connection. But that conversation is so important because there's a few things I want to say, but the main thing I want to say here is that, in the social media platforms, sometimes those deep conversations that we need to have are restricted into a tweet or into a sound bite or an opinion. And what I've been noticing more and more happening is people unfriending each other, making statements like, if you don't agree with me in some way, I'm going to just end you. How does that help? And certainly maybe there's some cases that we want to do that, I'm not judging that. We have created this suffering, and we can fix this suffering, and we each have a part to play in
that. I resonate with what you've said, and I feel that coming back to the idea of how everything is interrelated, as we know in yoga and Ayurveda, we speak about this in many different forms, and all the time we practice this in our own lives. And yet there seems to be a cynical impression that I hear about often with regards to the spiritual world or the new age yogis, where we have zenned out a little bit, and there's this idea that the activism that exists in the spiritual realms, whether they're institutionalized religions or yogic practices and philosophies, there seems to be a space where we have been generalized as sort of pacifists and people that turn a cheek and a blind eye. And I wanted you to refer back to when you were instigated to begin your practice and how that manifested for you. Was it something personal? Was it something societal? What instigated your thirst and your longing to start questioning the status quo, start questioning culture, who you were, how you lived, how the world existed, and what brought you to where you are today, and how you feel your practice as a very well-known yoga teacher and sort of activist in your music and what you teach in the world, how that's changed over the years?
So, I guess, I want to qualify this by saying that a metaphor that I have received and kind of added to in my own understanding is, I think of life as a circle. And in the yoga tradition and many traditions, wisdom traditions, the idea is that we're first souls. We're first, our essence is something more than just this physical form or the mind. So there's, we could call it whatever we want, maybe a soul, a spirit, or divine essence, or maybe nothing, maybe a mystery, but that we are something else first, and we come to this earth school, this karma school. The soul is here to learn lessons. This is also in astrology systems. Each of those 12 houses is a house of mastery for the soul's journey. So the idea is like we're on this journey, and that's actually something that we've lost, I feel, in our current story. So all cultures have traditionally had mythologies and stories, which are their living wisdom tradition, ways of passing on teachings and understanding. And our modern culture has been very broken in that we've lost a lot of our sacred story. I'm not going to say all of it, and I'm not going to say every tradition has. Everybody has to think for themselves and, even feel into what I'm saying and whether it has resonance or not. But I remember growing up, and my parents, usually when you're a kid, you're not into your parents' TV shows, right? But there was a couple that I was really intrigued by. One of them was The Power of Myth, Bill Moyers, incredible journalist interviewing Joseph Campbell. I was about 13 years old, and I was just so, I would go into a trance listening to this incredible conversation, and I probably understood maybe half of it, I don't know, but there was something that I heard that I'd never heard before, and I'll just paraphrase it. It was one of our great historians and teachers and storytellers, a man who spent his life studying the sacred stories of other cultures, speaking about the commonality of these stories and the soul's journey through life and the deeper meaning of that and how profound it is. And when we lose that deeper meaning, when life becomes about material gain, about wealth, about outer things, we lose our inner connection. And this is something we all know. We know it deep down, no matter how much we have, how little we have. Everything has a place, including money and comfort and, things. But why are we really here? And I think this relates to our bigger conversation and reflection. What is the purpose of this life? I know, I'm 52 now. I have known for a while. I'm not here forever. But when you get older, you start to really feel that. You don't take it for granted, or you could, I guess. But in my case, for different reasons, I haven't been taking it for granted as much and realizing it's a limited time. So I've always been intrigued by this conversation. And so that was a big door opening for me. My parents were very open. They let me be interested in what I wanted to be interested in when I was young. They just supported me in that. And one of them was God. They would drop me off. So a white boy from England moving to America, moving then immediately to New Orleans, falling in love with the culture there, mostly black culture, the music, sports, the way of being. I was it's relevant to our conversation today because so much of what is soulful in American culture and in world culture is from our black brothers and sisters. And this, a way of responding even to incredible oppression and difficulty in their journey with aliveness and with soulfulness. And as a young boy from England who didn't know anything about it, it moved me. And so I asked to go to churches, and I was taken to various churches. My parents would check it out because they didn't want to go for whatever their reasons were. They were more spiritual in their own way. And the churches were, especially the black churches, there was so much, is bhakti. I mean, now I know that as bhakti, this living devotion and prayer. So these were kind of first experiences. And then when I was 16, a Buddhist monk who's also a yogi, a friend of my father's, walked into my living room and my life changed. And he was my first real Dharma teacher. And I was with him. His name is Yogavachara Rahula. He's still alive. He's a beautiful, gentle, loving, wise soul who, I recognized that in him as a 16-year-old, not knowing exactly what it was, but just feeling drawn to him. And that got me on my path. And when I went to Asia, I was about 22. I just recovered from an almost fatal head infection where I was paralyzed on one side of my body for about 8 hours and had my head cut open, an abscess drained. It's a long story which I won't go into, but it was kind of like a shamanic death experience that I went through. A part of me literally died, could not keep going in the music business. And I went off to Asia to learn. It just so happened that when I got back to America, the yoga thing was hitting. And I got offered a job. I needed a job. So that was at Yoga Works in Santa Monica and the White Lotus Foundation in Santa Barbara. And so I'm going to say that I believe there are, in response to your question, there are different areas that we're here to learn about, not just spiritual things, but family things, business things, work things, community things, health things. You could study the houses of astrology to kind of maybe get an overview of that, but there's a lot for soul study, and there are very spiritual people I know that don't know even how to balance a checkbook, or that would be me. Not that I'm very spiritual, meaning, but I've been working on that for a long time, and like still like balancing a checkbook is like really out of my realm of comfort because my brain doesn't work that way so well. I work at it. So there are different things for us to learn here, and we can learn from each other. And so I, was given this gift of yoga, of healing in my own life. I've been very blessed to share it with others and make a living at it, to support my family with it. I'm always trying to honor back to the tradition and place from which it came from. I go to India almost every year. I have since 2007. I missed some years before that. First one in 95. And the incredible wisdom, and we've been there together and had chai there together, and when you take the kids, and it's an amazing thing to go to a source place of something you love. And so for me, it's about honoring where it comes from. That's really important. And I do my best at it. It's imperfect. But now, you asked me about activism also. I think we naturally, all babies are born. I've seen studies that show babies are not born with hate. We're only born with, they said, I don't know if this has been updated, but 2 main fears. Fear of sudden loud noises and fear of falling. Everything else is a learned fear, conditioned. Same with hate. Babies don't hate, they respond to their environment. I think we naturally care for each other and our Mother Earth and our Father Sky. And we're conditioned in different ways. And some of it's beautiful and some of it is baggage, I think. Because we naturally care, it's our natural condition to care, that's always in us. No matter how much the interference is there, no matter how much other voices may come in, when you get heart to heart, human to human, we're going to break through. Because this is why it's so important to talk to each other, because we do actually give a shit. We care about each other. We care for this planet. We care about our future. And the activism piece, I feel like we all have an inner earth activist, an inner activist for life, whether it's just wanting the people around us to get healthier and us, or starting to speak about the things we love. I'm by no means consider myself any kind of professional activist. It's just something that I try to speak to because I care about it. And I consider myself more of a peace activist, and that's really a theme for me. I see the importance of that. But I realize it's connected to so many other issues, including justice. And so I've just been learning as I go. Every year, every season, I'm learning something else that I didn't know. And let me just say one last thing is that those especially that are following a yogic path or interested in that, the ancient yogis used the word called vichara, which means inquiry. To want to know, to inquire into life, to want to know who I am, what is the purpose of my life, what is God, what is the nature of my soul, and isn't it true, like if we really are fascinated with something or into something, we Google it, right? Now we look it up, but we really want to know about it. We want to inquire into it. And so yoga is just that, but with your own being and the nature of existence itself. To be curious about life, and especially in the current incredibly challenging situation that we're in, I think is really healthy. It worries me when we take, I'm going to use the word we as a collective, when we take a place of, I have all the answers, I know what's up, I see everything with the politics, I know this person's going to win, I see this issue, I see that, I know this is happening with this conspiracy theory, or this isn't happening with this. We're actually conditioned in this social media zone, pressured to have an opinion, pressured by our social tribe. If you differ from the tribe nowadays, and start questioning stuff, you're going to get, maybe, not always, depends on the tribe, but you're probably going to get shamed. That takes a lot of energy to deal with, first of all, and nobody wants that. That's a big thing, because you and I know, are of like mind on this, that it's so important, like if we want deeper truth, to question things, to look deeply, not even disrespectfully, that's not what we mean. It's just with love, with respect, to question. Because if we don't, if we just take what the media is telling us, remember, corporate media, please, I'm not saying everything on there is false at all. Much of it is true. But it's a for-profit media system that must be questioned, must be held accountable. Government must be held accountable. I mean, this is what we're seeing now. And each of us, and again, no one's perfect. No one is right all the time. What if we could just change this conversation to have a more empathic, loving, human conversation?
The polarization of the current narratives that exist today, and we can't boycott social media. I mean, some people have, they've gone off the grid and they've left, and bless them, you know. But for the majority of us who are just ordinary human beings, no matter what our vocation or place in the world, we are affected by the current situation of everything that's going on, and we naturally empathize. Given the almost like instigated polarization of the narrative to become divisive in every faction, in every industry, in every so-called collective community, how do we move through that? How do we, as just individuals, allow ourselves to walk on neutral ground where we take a stand for what is right and what is wrong? Because even though from a yogic perspective, we can say cosmically, it's just a leela, it's a play, everyone's going towards the same direction, different paths lead to the same place. However, the three-dimensional reality of cause and effect, which we have to inhale to exhale, we have to give to receive. How do we, through morals, through conduct, through confrontation, as supposed conscious, aware human beings, move through this polarized narrative without compromising what's right and wrong, and yet being the ones who are moderating and shining the light brighter so that we can come together? How do we do that?
I'll let you know if I figure it out. I think we're finding a way to do that together. I think, I'll just share my reflection on that. I mean, so when you were saying that, there's a beautiful passage in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the beautiful and powerful spiritual texts and of India. And in the Gita, it says, it is better to struggle in one, and so the word dharma is truth here, I'll use it that way, path, truth. It is better to struggle in one's own truth than to thrive in another's. And I'm interpreting that not as a scholar, but just as someone who's read it and internalized that teaching. And the belief in the yoga tradition is that God is truth. The ultimate reality is deeper truth. All of us, as we kind of go around our circle, our seat in the circle of life, we see different things as true at different times. Absolute truth is very different than the ego's version of truth. We see things as true at a moment in time. How many of us, probably all of us, we don't think things are true that we used to think when we were little kids, like maybe the tooth fairy, or maybe, there's so many, examples of that, because we're all evolving towards even our capacity to understand a deeper truth. So for me, because I know that I don't know everything, I have to remember humility. I also know that my ego kicks in You know, we all have ego, the need to be right, the need to be viewed a certain way. But ego is also a blind spot, and it's not even that ego is bad, because you need to have a dynamic personality. Part of that is we're all unique beings. Like, you wouldn't want everybody to just be the same. Part of that is what I consider a positive expression of our divine uniqueness. So as we're navigating through this, and you also mentioned divisiveness in the social media and in the world in general, this is the big... So, you know, the oldest trick in the book, I like to say, is fear. It's the separation from love. Be afraid. You know, understand forces of chaos. Understand why war exists. Not that I'm an expert on these, but it's like really understanding how these things can even come to be. When we get separated from our deeper source and love and truth, and we begin to, it's kind of what I was sharing a little earlier, it's just we begin to act in a way that creates more suffering for ourselves and others. And we're looking at thousands of years of practice at war. We're looking, I mean, I know this is a really scary time and so difficult in so many ways, and I feel like it's necessary because of the level of asleepness, unconsciousness that we have been in, the level of denial that we've been in, the level of destructive behavior, the level of distortion from the divine law, from Mother Earth's law. We've created a world based on war, extraction of resources from Mother Earth without love, and oppression of others. We've created a system. People are arguing socialism, capitalism, this ism, that. All these isms are imperfect. We need a new system. But what is dividing us is thriving on that, because it doesn't know any other way. It has to get healed. That part of us that's divided, we can only heal through our inner work. That's why it's so important for everyone, including activists and moms and dads and lawyers and politicians and everyone, to be doing some form of self-reflection, to be in integrity, to heal ourselves, to, when we make mistakes, to own it. We've created a climate, and this is why so many people don't do it, where to honor your mistake or to make a wrong answer, it's like what we're talking about, you're immediately pounced on. And the fear of that is paralyzing for people. So we lose our courage to be authentic because it's scary to speak up. But we can all learn how to do it. You're doing it here. I'm learning to do it. We're all learning, and I've been really afraid, and many times. But I just know that I've got to. There's a part of me that just knows I've got to be brave and say something. Start. Sometimes the best place to start is anywhere. Mm-hmm. To not overthink ourselves, or because we want it to be a certain way, but just show up with your heart, show up with your love, your care for other people, for what's happening, and you will be guided into what to do. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? So, and then as we're navigating through all of this, to be authentic, to be a loving person, to be someone who cares, to be someone who can admit mistakes, to be someone who just shows up, is how we navigate through it. There is no other way. It's going to be, I think from here on out, we're off the script. Mm. And even when there was a script before, it was just something that made the mind feel safe anyway. We weren't really dealing with the things that we need to deal with. How can America, how can the world, okay, wow. Is it okay if I go on a little bit? So I want to tie one thing in. So I was just reading the other day about just some different billionaires' visions for space. I'm not going to say who, doesn't matter. It's a mindset. And while there's some great visioning in there, to me, there's something really crazy in there. We're already talking about colonizing space, making profit in space, really what we're talking about. Taking our same madness here, not fixing it, not taking care of it, not healing Earth, giving up on Earth, and taking our shit somewhere else. This is the madness. Putting profit over people, oppressing, glorifying our God is money, our God is wealth, our God is power. And you and I know the concept of Shakti, which is the divine feminine power, the unconditional love that permeates all of creation. That's true power. That's what Jesus was aligned with. That's what all great masters have been aligned with. We worship a false power. We worship power over others. We worship conquest, war, domination. This only creates suffering. America has some incredible seeds and vision of the founding fathers, and it also has some big blind spots. Their exclusion of women to a certain degree was one, and maybe it was the culture they were coming from. But do you know that they copied, point for point, the great law of peace, which became, from the Iroquois nation, which became the Constitution? Except for three things. The Supreme Court would be all women. It was, they didn't call it Supreme Court, it was the Supreme Council. It was all women. The feminine wisdom governed the tribe. They chose the leader and could remove him at any time. That's number two. And number three, they would only choose when we go to war. Those three things were taken out, left out. Maybe they couldn't, maybe they didn't understand. I don't know. They didn't include that. They used everything else though. And there were some beautiful intentions, perhaps the greatest intentional document for the beginning of a country, but many of them were slave owners. Many of them were imperfect. I mean, we're all imperfect. So they did what they could. They got it going. And then, you know, there's so much, and there's so much history and all that, but we're looking at that. And so to anyone today who is looking at what's happening, like I have friends that are white that feel that we've gone past racism in America. I don't understand it. And I know some black brothers and sisters who also say that we don't have racism anymore. I'm not saying, I don't want to say anyone else is wrong in a sense. I just know that we all need to find deeper truth. And what I see with my mind and heart and experience and growing up in America and having black friends and having friends, people of color and indigenous people, the incredible odds arrayed against maybe not all of them, but most of them. And we're seeing it with the violence, the amount of unarmed black people, the way that black people are treated. In the indigenous community, there's a, and I don't know a lot about this, but it's something that I'm trying to learn more about. There's an incredible amount of missing young women from the indigenous Native American community that's just not being addressed. It's like crazy. If this was happening in white neighborhoods, just young women going missing. Like, to me, I mean, I feel a lot of emotion coming. It's like, this is the part that breaks your heart, because when you realize how fucked up things are and how it isn't fair, and you and I and many people, like, our lives aren't perfect. We didn't have everything given to us, but we have certain things that we never had to worry about. We have certain privileges we never had to think about. You know, and everyone's experience is different. So, but if we don't care for our brothers and sisters, if we don't see the pain and the anguish that people are going through and try to do something, for me, I'll speak for me, if I don't try to do something, then I can't live with myself. And I know it's going to be imperfect. I know I'm going to make mistakes. And sometimes I just have to be quiet and listen, which is what I tried to do the first days of what was happening. I didn't make any posts. It was just what I needed to do. And I tried to listen. I tried to listen to black brothers and sisters, because this is really for them, this moment. This is what's coming up. There are so many issues in life, but right now this is real, and we need to be in support of each other and not whitewash it. And I don't mean that in terms of color, but not wash it out with so many other things. Like, everything has its moment, and this is overdue, because what happens, it comes up and it goes away, it comes up and it goes away, and we're still living with institutionalized racism in America. Does that mean every cop is bad? I don't think so at all. I know some. I know not a lot, but I know my brother has been in the military. My father was in the military. Police officers. There are so many people who care. So this is about us all coming together and banding together in support of equality and justice and the world that we want to live in. And the polarizing is off the charts. So I'm not a Democrat anymore. A lot of my Democrat friends are questioning that. But, I grew up as a progressive. I'm still a progressive in many ways, kind of democratic socialism. But I've gotten to the point where I just can't play this game anymore. This binary left-right stuff. There's so much dysfunction in the system. I need to be what I perceive as the middle, because I want to get to the deeper truth that's there for everyone. And there's issues in the institution that need to be healed, and one of them is racism.
It seems as though the onset of this divisiveness and chaos that's occurring in the world today, it's always been there. It's just been sort of like rumbling at the surface in different parts of the world, in America, everywhere. But we've reached a critical point now where it's coming apart at the seams. Began with the coronavirus. We were in India and we sort of heard what was going on. By the time we got here, the lockdown began, and here we are today. So myself, when I heard about the virus and China and America, and listening to the briefings every day, and every day was a new set of rules and regulations, and the fear and the ambiguity, I began questioning everything from an Ayurvedic practitioner, from a yogi, from a mother, from a human being, from somebody who is reasonably educated. I started questioning, because I feel that we all need to question everything, especially when it comes to our health and well-being and things that have to do with our survival. Yeah. And was immediately shut down and shot down
on social media.
On social media, in conversations one-on-one, because the fear was so intense, and the lack of courage to be able to stand in a crisis space and ask questions in a calm way, and to be able to look at every other side, no matter what side we're on, so that we can navigate a little more intelligence and reasonable activity around how to resolve and move forward. I realized at that point, there is no left and right. There is no community. Everyone is a free willy on their own, banding to one side or another without really engaging in any kind of conversation, introspection, or trying to understand what's going on either side. And that left me quite, not intimidated, because I feel like I'm too old to be intimidated in my life these days, but it left me very pessimistic about my faith in humanity and where we are as a society, not only for ourselves, but for our children. So I wanted to hear your perspective on, it's almost like a 4-letter word, like you're not supposed to say your real opinion about the coronavirus. And if you say anything against anyone's ideas, then you're deemed a monster, or against human rights or health, or against people with disabilities, and the list goes on.
There's a quote by Plato: "Those who tell the stories control the society." This is one of the, and I'm not even saying right or wrong, I'm just to understand the principle. Whoever is telling the story of what things are telling you what to believe is controlling this society. I'm with you. I question everything. And I think that's a healthy place to be, at least for me. Obviously, there are things we trust. I want to clarify something I said earlier, too, which is when I said I'm not a Democrat, I'm also not a Republican. I'm not doing that whole system. Like, for me, it's about, I mean, I wanted to start a party called the Human Party, and I'm sure I'm not going to do it, but, you know, there's so many of us that could do that together. To me, it's about being human first. To me, I want to put yoga first. I care about others. I don't think any one person, any institution, any political monopoly on the truth. And this is the problem, what you're saying. It's like, if I agree with, let's say, if I'm a Democrat on this issue, then I'm expected to be a Democrat on all other issues. But what if I disagree with some of those things? Or if I'm a Republican because of this issue, then I have to buy the whole thing. The moment corruption has come into the system, that's how we're gotten. Because if you dissent from the tribe, you are shamed. This is what we're talking about. The level of, and you said something earlier very profound. People are afraid, and this is why they do it. Because we're so afraid and we're not in touch with our emotions. We're not able to process our emotions. Fear especially. We want to shut down anything that's going to trigger us to look at that. So here's something around that. Wherever we are reactive, and I'm not saying that there's things that we shouldn't be reactive about, because there's some deep stuff. I'm reactive about certain things. But I know that when I'm operating from a place of reactivity, I'm not operating from my center. I'm not operating from my place of connection to source. I'm being triggered. So if one agrees that when we are being triggered and reactive and not operating from our deeper, and that stops us from operating from our deeper connection to source, to God, to truth, whatever we want to call that, even our ability to just respond with our view, like our vision, to really see what's going on. What does fear do? It constricts, right? Anger. How do we really see clearly when we're flying off the handle at somebody, or when we're in a state of total fear, or like our confidence is shut down, or we can't respond to life? It's through that lens. The triggering that's happening and the censorship that is happening in media. Like, there are probably a handful of words we could mention right now, which we're not going to mention, that we'd probably would get a flag on social media, regardless of the opinion about it. That's scary to me. And that's not about right or wrong. What if those words were on the other side right now? So what's happening now is the conversation gets shut down. If somebody or something is just absolutely crazy, I should be able to see that that's crazy without being so freaked out about it. If you come to me and say, Saul, I think da-da-da-da-da, and I really think it's so out there, oh my God, I can't believe you think that. Be quiet, be quiet. First of all, that doesn't honor our friendship, right? It's like, so people say, some of these things, like conspiracy theories, and there are some really crazy conspiracy theories out there, right? Let's be honest. But people are desperate because they also know, most of them, not everybody, but that everything being told to us in the nightly news is also not true, or potentially not true. I personally do not believe all of it. I personally do not believe everything we're being told about the coronavirus. I personally do not believe all the conspiracy theories I'm seeing about the coronavirus. I actually, quite honestly, and I'm going to out myself, right? Like, if somebody's a conspiracy theorist because they have a different take on what's happening in the history books, then that would be me. Because I've researched, I've looked into what the American government and many governments around the world have been up to the last few hundred years. Been a lot of lies, been a lot of deception. Big pharma. Is it okay to talk about this?
Yeah, please.
All right.
I hope we don't get
Big
flagged.
pharma. Well, I mean, hey, that shouldn't flag it because we're not talking about other things. I'm just saying, it's like, but it's not just big pharma. It's many things. Military-industrial complex. Policies of our government. I mean, if we get shut down for that, then we no longer have a constitution. This is all I think going to end up. It's going to end up in the Supreme Court because these issues are becoming. It's like, what is the direction of our country? When you look at America, you go back. America is a republic first. It's a republic, and that Constitution. I mean, I am not in any way qualified to riff on the Constitution. What I can say is I read, on a personal experience, as I read the Constitution, I am really blown away by what was written into this to safeguard personal freedom, because that's what they were coming from. They were coming from tyranny. They were coming from being taxed without having a voice, being economically oppressed without having a right to speak. And the languaging it's so profound, and the truth is people interpret it in different ways. You have constitutional scholars on both sides of the aisle saying different things, so it's somewhat subjective, but we're going to have to ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to live in? And that's actually what we're being asked right now. It's just that we entered into this, I call it, it's like a curveball. Most of us, or maybe all of us that have been being reflective about what's happening in our world, we know it's not sustainable. We know we're not in a sustainable course for the future of our children, environmentally, economically, on so many levels, right? It's got to change. How's it going to change? All of a sudden, COVID-19 is here. This is an unprecedented time. Our children right now, the ones that are coming of age, I have an 18-year-old who's graduating this week. He's coming of age in an incredibly transformative, scary time. A nod to all the high school seniors out there who are not having their graduations right now, hopefully they're being honored. You are coming at age in an incredibly powerful time in the history of the earth. There have been other things we've been through that have been very intense on planet Earth. So many things in our history, actually. But we have to question things. If we want to think for ourselves, if we want to feel for ourselves, if we want to really be a voice and support, and not fall into a trap of shutting others down because they disagree with us. I personally feel like the whole thing is being manipulated. Whether it's unconscious or conscious, it doesn't even matter. It's being manipulated. It's the algorithm in the system is to divide. If you believe in unity, if you want peace, if you want fellow humans, if you really love and respect all the sacred tribes that God created, black, white, yellow, brown, and red, all the cultures, if you believe in that vision for our planet, then we have to be the ones who make that so. We got to listen to each other. Like, I have friends that I completely disagree with on certain things, and I try to talk to them because I want to understand why they see. I have people, political views, religious views. I want to know why. I don't want to lose friendships. I know people I know are good, loving people. I'm not going to unfriend them and shame them and talk down to them on social media. I'm just going to disagree on certain things. I mean, quite honestly, social media is not the place maybe 90, 95, 99% of the time to even try to have a healing conversation. It's in a fishbowl with so much pressure coming in to have healing conversations. Step into the chat room, or like just call somebody up and say, "Hey, friend, I love you. You're important to me. Could you reflect with me on this? Because I'm seeing something different. Feel something different." If we don't do this, it's going to become more and more segregated. And then it's used as fuel by unconscious forces to create more hatred, more fear, more division in our world. And if we don't want that, then we have to stand up for something else. I made a post yesterday, I think, actually, just acknowledging pain. The collective pain that we're seeing out in this world, it's collective, meaning it's collected from all of us. We all have pain. In some way, we're all hurt inside. Something happened when we were young. Something happened recently. We had a heartache. We had oppression. So, in some way, we're all wounded. It's part of our human condition. The great Persian poet, Sufi says, the wound is where the light gets in. It's part of our thing. So, I'm grateful that we can have this conversation here, and others that feel a resonance with this find ways to have conversations, because it's so important.
The conversation has to begin. It has to remain. It has to expand. We have to have the courage to hear each other, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we don't see eye to eye. And in closing, I would love for you to give a message to the young people of this world, to the people who are just coming into society as full-blown adults, high schoolers, college graduates, the youth that are revolting in the streets. What is your message for them today, Saul?
Well, what I've seen in the youth in these last years is so much courage, resilience, wisdom, questioning, truth to power. I've also seen them dealing with a lot of challenges, adversity, the pressures of social media being just one of them. So, inside all of us is something really magic and beautiful. That, whatever we might call it, that little spark of life, that divine essence, that particle of light, particles of light. Life is a miracle. And we're all here for some reason, some purpose. This is in so many traditions echoed. And it's about the success in life is not just about making money. It's not about having followers on social media. It's not about anything material. Those things come and go. It's about being solid with you and with you within. And you're here for a divine purpose. You're here for a reason. And your parents did the best they could with what they had. They made mistakes. We all do. And you're going to make mistakes. Don't be afraid of that. But just be true to you. And surround yourself with the people, the energies, because everything has an effect on who we are. We are energetic beings. Surround yourself with the things that feed your best self and your highest good. And know that you matter and that you will create this world together. And it's going to be beautiful. And this is the initiation. What we can create if we get aligned is incredible, because even just 3% of the US military budget every year, just 3 little percent, and we take care of world hunger for that year. Everyone eats. Wow. Everyone. 3%. Think about that. We're not aligned. We're not aligned with spirit and mind and heart and body. We have everything we need right now to take care of the people, for everyone to have a beautiful life, to thrive, to have enough. And we have the woman power, the man power. We just don't have enough consciousness and will behind it to do it. We have the technology and the infrastructures. We just need to wake up. And I'll say one last thing that Gandhi said: there is enough for everyone's need and not everyone's greed. And that's the law of Mother Earth. She gives everything for all of us. The beautiful mountains, the rivers, the food, the resources. Share what you've got and you multiply it. And that's the way. Sharing and caring. No fear.
A beautiful conversation of hope and courage and change. So needed today. Thank you so much for coming on with me. I hope we share again together. And I'm with you, Saul. Power to the people.
Power to the people, and power to all of our brothers and sisters right now who are fighting oppression and, difficult circumstances and racism and institutionalized oppression. And, let's all work together, come together, and support each other and help each other. Love you. Thank you, sister.